Hello and welcome to the Captain Bob Flight Sim podcast. Today we have a guest on the show, Jason Cross, also known as CessSim on his YouTube channel. So, how are you doing?
Thanks, Captain, and pleasure to be on your channel here today, and looking forward to participating in this podcast, and somewhat humbled actually that I'm on board, but really looking forward to the chat with you. For me, it's this evening. I think for you, it's this morning.
Exactly. It's weird how the time zones worked, and I'm glad we could find something that worked out.
No, that's right. I mean, we're on opposite sides of the globe, but fantastic that, with today's technology, that we're able to bring a community together quite quickly. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's see. I'm gonna wear these so it doesn't pop out. All right. Can you still? Can I hear you? I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you loud and clear. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. That should be a lot better. Perfect. Yeah, audio is not coming through where it's not supposed to come through, so that's always good. So yeah, we can continue.
Yeah,
Perfect.
well, for me, I mean, like the Discord. I'm actually not familiar with the software, so this is the first, for me personally, the first Discord that I've actually undertaken. So I'll have to get my head around Discord, and it looks pretty powerful. But yeah, I've got to get my head around this one.
Yeah, it's really nice for communities, I think, because you can have like a forum and a chat, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, resume now. uh,
Okay.
Excellent. Um, so you've started the CessSim, I guess, YouTube channel, and I think you're mostly focusing on YouTube for that. What is that, and how did you start it?
Yeah, good question, mate, and one for opening up with. So I guess probably to go back in history a little bit, the YouTube channel is probably something that I've only just started recently, and fundamentally that's actually really because for many, many years, I've always taken things from the internet. I've taken things from YouTube, yourself included. I've watched so many of your videos and learnt so much. And I've felt somewhat selfish for just taking, taking so much and never giving anything back. And so for me, when I put the simulator together, again, appreciating that I'd also learned a fair bit from the community, but I felt that in doing the channel, I would be able to hopefully, particularly with some of my sim build videos, give something back and offer some tips and tricks and bits and pieces that would hopefully just, provide that feedback back into the community. And that was really the premise behind CessSim. And it's a fairly self-explanatory YouTube name, Cessna for the type of aircraft that I have, and Sim being a simulator. Uh, and yeah, and really, look, I never really set out. I mean, and it's still a very, very young channel. It's primarily focused in sort of a couple of key areas. It obviously is centered around the Cessna 172 Skyhawk G1000 panel, as you would have seen. I have a series of videos that talk about the build and various aspects of the build and tweaks that I do to the build, which I'm still doing. I'm playing around with lighting at the moment, but I may get to that a bit later on in this session. And then obviously I'll have some general flying bits and pieces as well, just for purely entertainment purposes. And then probably the only other element is my participation on VATSIM. So through the VATSIM program here in Australia, on the VATPAC network, and participate in a lot of the VFR flying on Sundays.
Excellent. Um, yeah, I've really enjoyed watching all of the like videos you've been putting out about your build and sometimes the flying videos and stuff like that. And yeah, it's really awesome that you're giving back to the community. And I think that's awesome when people do it.
Yeah, I think you're right, mate. And honestly, and full credit to yourself and all those other people in the community that have provided so much. I mean, so much of my simulator has been because of what I've grabbed, from YouTube, and the tutorials and everything. And and yeah, I really just wanted to a small part of my channel to do something and give something back. And it's surprising actually, almost daily now I will get notifications on YouTube of people asking me things, and how to do this, or the monitor setup, or what sort of potentiometers are you using, and all sorts of different questions, dual yokes, all the stuff that I'm sure you would have had yourself. And it's really cool to be able to just sit down, take the time, and answer all of those questions. And I never miss one. I will always make sure I answer every single one. I suppose I can do that while the channel's still quite small. And so yeah, and I enjoy that, and I enjoy knowing that I'm hopefully helping someone. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so cool that you're doing that and answering all the questions, because there are a lot of them and they pop up quickly.
They do. Yeah.
So you had the name CessSim. Who came up with that, and how did you come up with that, or if you did?
I came up with that one. Honestly, I can't even recall when, Captain. I'm pretty sure I was probably having a glass of wine or something, and I was just sitting there, and I'm going, well, what can I call this? What can I call? How am I going to brand what I'm doing? And I've somewhat, I suppose, in the branding of that, I have somewhat put myself into a bit of a niche because I've branded myself CessSim. So by its very nature, I've now put myself into purely Cessna simulation, and I'm okay with that, because I really do. I mean, I live near a local GA airport here. Well, I say near; it's probably about 20 kilometres away. And convert that into miles for you guys. But it has all the 172s. It's your typical GA airport and it's actually quite a busy airport. And that's what people train on for the most part, that and Pipers and so on. And, and people own 172s. And so I felt, well, I'll just stick with the 172 and it can be my little plane that I own. And so yeah, and so I think, and you probably hopefully would agree, is when you build a cockpit, particularly when you're building something that you physically are sitting in, and you've got no keyboard and mouse around you, and it's just you're trying to get it as real as you can to the real thing. Unless you're going to start switching out panels and other bits and pieces, which you can do, I guess you can do that. But, I just wanted to have almost something that was built and then it's kind of set and forget, like it's there, and you are entering this cockpit and it's fixed, So for me, that is the 172 G1000. And that's what I've done. Yeah. Oh, sorry. To answer your question, because I probably waffled on a bit there. CessSim. So CessSim. I'm trying to think what actually the names I had. I'm sure I had a couple of others back in the day. There was, I can't even think. But yeah, it was literally, it actually was just a light bulb moment. I think I was just sitting there and I was just, scratching around and going, oh, what am I going to call this thing? What am I going to call this thing? And Cess, and I'm a simulator, Cessna Sim, and it's just, you start talking about these things and CessSim, that's it. But then you'll notice as well, like the way that I've worded it, it's capital C, small letter E, S, and then I go back to another capital S or something like that. So I didn't want it to have Sesame, so it was all like that. I had to make sure there was a capital S, in if you look at the wording of how I spell it. so that you can see the CES and the SIM, so
Yeah.
CessSim,
Has some punch.
because well, yes, and it's probably a good one because initially when I did the initial, and that's coming back to me now, when I did the initial name, I just had it that way. I had CessSim, all lowercase except for the C at the front. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. Sesame. No one's going to say that, So I needed to tweak that. And so obviously just put the capital S in and then it was all fixed. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. Oh, I have some more questions. I have a whole list of them. They're good questions. uh, oh, have you seen the new Top Gun? That's not on the list, but
No, I'm glad you say that because no, I haven't. And then the wife and I have been talking about going to see that. I'm yeah. No, short answer, no, I haven't seen it. Looking forward to seeing it, and I definitely would like to see that on the big screen as opposed to waiting till it gets released on
mm-hmm.
the smaller screens. Yeah, I think it'll do it justice seeing it on the big screen.
Yeah, it's good.
I
um,
can imagine. I've heard that there's no CGI. It's all real. Have I got that right?
I think so. I think there's like,
Yeah, I heard. Well, if there is CGI, apparently it's very, very limited.
yeah,
From
I
what I
think so.
understand, it was all done real time, and there's no, special effects as such in that respect. It was all feel the G forces and everything, and that's just insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm gonna look at some of the behind the scenes sometime. They're crazy. All right.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, with that, I have another question. It's what was the easiest and the hardest part of your flight simulator?
Oh, geez. Yeah, this will rack my brains a bit. Because I suppose as well, maybe to just dive into a bit of history as well on it, because it took me really. I've only just started the flying bit recently. I probably spent, and someone said to me, "How could you have spent that long?" But I actually spent overall, I think probably about 2.5 to 3 years from the time I actually started putting pen to paper, or not even that, like just grabbing information from the internet,
Mm-hmm.
sketches and trying to get those dimensions and the stuff that I think you've broadcasted yourself in the past, collecting that information and then moving to design and everything else. And for me, I mean, I work full time, so very difficult for me to get time. And obviously, I've also got a young little boy, who commands a bit of time as well. Um, so it was more of a sometimes in the evenings and a little bit on the weekends, and I just chip away at that, and carry on. I spent months and months and months in design, and that's probably another tip for people that are with listening, and I'm sure you would agree. You cannot underestimate design. I initially started out mine in AutoCAD. I actually come from an engineering background. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, and that I guess helped me for my AutoCAD side of things. But then I got wind of Fusion and then moved. My what was at that time was quite a basic CAD model. It was certainly wasn't finished by any stretch. It was just basic framing and very, very basic shapes, which I was going to refine. And then moved that into Fusion and got myself up the Fusion 360 curve, and then built the full model from that in Fusion 360. Anyway, but to answer your question in full, what was probably the hardest part and what was the easiest? I think, yeah, probably the hardest part for me um, was well, it was probably the learning of the Fusion 360. I think that was actually a bit hard. So Because there was a few
Yes.
new bits and pieces in there that weren't quite working the way I wanted to, and orientations, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a few bits in there that didn't go quite the way I wanted them to. I fixed them all now, but Fusion was probably a bit of a challenge. Um, getting accurate dimensions, or as accurate as I believe they are, of the 172.
Mm-hmm.
And again, in hindsight, I probably should have just taken myself down to the local GA airport and asked someone there if I can sit in their aircraft for half an hour or an hour and just take dimensions. I think that would have been
Mm-hmm.
the best way to go. And if I was to do the job again, that's what I would do. I would literally go down there with a tape measure and measure everything up and do it that way. But yeah, getting the dimensions of the unit. Um, oh no, there actually is another thing that's actually quite hard. Sorry, there's one that trumps all of it, and it's the electronic side of it, the electric or the
Oh,
electronic, the circuit stuff, the Mobi flight stuff, the stuff that you are
gotcha.
so good at. For me, was as I said before, I come from a mechanical engineering background, and where I work here in Australia, I'm in mining, and electronics and electrical side of things for me isn't isn't something that comes first nature for
Mm-hmm.
me. It's not my area of expertise. So I had to learn, honestly, when I first started, it was, what the hell is a potentiometer? That's where I started. What is a potentiometer? What is this switch? What is MobiFlight? What is an Arduino? I didn't even know what they were. I had no idea. But I knew that if I was going to have standby gauges, and if I was going to have, throttle and mixture and do all those
Mm-hmm.
things, I had to get myself up the curve with potentiometers and all that sort of base circuitry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started trolling the net surely there must be some YouTube videos on that. And I came across your good self, and you have helped me immensely ever since.
Oh, that's good to hear. Good to hear they're working.
Yes,
uh,
that's right. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, the wiring can be really hard, especially when you're just new to it and you're like, this should be easy. And if it makes
Yes.
everyone feel better, it looks easy for me
Absolutely.
because they're edited.
Absolutely. No, and that's a good point as well. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was thinking, oh, the beauty of recording your videos is that you can edit the hell out of them so that people just see all the good stuff, and all the flying videos that I do, that I post. And again, I'll caveat, and I think I've caveated that anyway. I'm not a trained pilot. I make a crap load of mistakes, but it is for entertainment. I do take it seriously, obviously, but it is for entertainment. But yeah, making a hell of a mistakes. But when you're posting your own videos, you can edit so much of them, and I edit so much out of them. But on the electrical side of things, yeah, if it wasn't for those Arduinos and yeah, and then the Leo Bodner units as well. So I've got the Leo Bodner units, two of them actually. So I think the BUO 83X, 836X or something like that, one of the long ones.
Mm.
So all, wires going into that, and there's another smaller one. So there's two of those. I've got, obviously the Arduino units, the Megas, all across the standbys, and all of that all hooking up into those, and then feeding via the USB back into the PC, and all running off a single PC. But yeah, electrical difficult for me. Yeah, but got there. Mm.
Excellent. And then what was the easiest part?
Um, Well, the computer build was pretty easy. I've built a few PCs in the past,
Gotcha.
so that one was fairly second nature to me. That was fairly straightforward. Look, all of once I actually had the dimensions, and again, just reinforcing, you know, the importance of getting your design right is just key. If you stuff your design, I think you're flying blind a little bit. If you're not, if you're building a cockpit, because you end up, particularly something like Fusion, a 3D model, you can build the model dimensionally correct. And yes, you get a few obviously tolerances with your real
Hmm.
pimbers and bits and pieces, but you're generally pretty close, as long as your cutting is close and so on. And for me, having the model and then literally, producing cutting lists and going for it, it worked beautifully. There was some slight, obviously, in your timbers, you sometimes get some slight tolerance errors
Hmm.
and so on, but generally you can take most of that up in your carpentry and so on. So for me, once I had the design, the easiest thing literally was putting it together. Structural mechanical for me
Hmm.
is fairly straightforward, and so that was probably the easiest of the bits is the actual building of the frame and the panel and so on. Putting it all together, that side of it was fairly straightforward, and the PC was pretty easy. Yeah, I say that flippantly. Easy as if I do it, left, right, and center. I don't, but I've done a few of them before, and that wasn't too bad.
Great,
But
yeah.
yeah, electronics definitely difficult.
For sure. That's good. For me, the PC was the hardest part. 'Cause I'm like, all these cables go everywhere. Like, what? But yeah, often I like to on these podcasts ask if you have any motivation to new flight simmers. Do you have any like tips or any advice or motivation?
Yeah, certainly do. I mean, again, and I think even with flight simmers, there's subgroups within that. There are people that just love to do the flying part of it. There are people that love to build. So there's groups within the group of the flight sim community, if you like. So if I can perhaps speak to those that are considering building a cockpit, and then using it, which is obviously what I've done, and I know that you yourself have, of building, and well, looks like there's something behind you there, mate, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So, yeah, so it's certainly a work in progress and looking really good. But yeah, so uh, uh, really my motivation and inspiration for those is, if you're passionate about it, and you really want to do it, there's a wealth of information. There's no shortage of information. The community's pretty big. Everyone that I've spoken to or interacted with in some way, shape, or form have always been helpful. Yourself and Moby Flight, and
Hmm.
I've on the glide slope when he was publishing. There's so many different people on there that
Hmm.
I've touched base with over the years, and all been really, really helpful. And that's helped me. So go for it, I say. Take your time. Don't rush it, and certainly don't rush the design. Tweak it and learn the software, whether it be Fusion or CAD software or something. It's very, very invaluable nowadays.
Hmm.
CAD softwares you can get relatively cheap, if not some online free stuff as well. So go for it, and ask questions, and you'll be surprised at what you can turn up. And it's really good at the end of the day when you finally stand back and look at this creation that you have made. It's really rewarding. So for me, even like now that I am starting to publish a few more videos and so on, the amount of compliments that I get is really, really gratifying to me. It obviously means that I've got something that looks half reasonable, and I'm really proud, and that makes me proud. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you should be proud. It's like an awesome project, and I would say that you've finished your simulator, mostly at least, right? And I
Yeah.
finished zero, so you're ahead of me in that way. Quite a
Yeah, no,
bit.
like I have and I haven't,
Mhm.
and I think I was touching on this before. One of and there are obviously things that just happen in when you eventually get it all. Even in the perfect world, you think you've got everything sorted, and one of the things that, well, I think probably Fusion can. I know, well, you probably know this better than me, but lighting. So I've used obviously the CAD program to do all the design and everything else, but I've never actually looked at it from a rendering point of view and then, cast light inside of it to see
Oh,
what
true.
effect that has, if that makes sense. So one of the things that I have found recently is I've got, as you would know, I've got the three 55-inch wraparound TVs around my frame, and then I started playing with the cameras, the webcams. I initially had some cheaper Logitech C615s. They were just 720p's and they just weren't doing the job at all, from looking over the wings and even behind. And so I thought I'd change them out. So I changed them out for Logitech 922s, which are now giving me the 1080p. And so I have them, there's, as you can probably see on my videos, there's one that's mounted behind looking forward, and then there's one over my head looking to the right wing, and one over the cockpit's head looking to the left. And then I switch those up, during the course of my recording of my video. But the Logitech cameras, what I was finding has been happening, and you'll see that if you look at some of my, or most of the videos anyway, from a flying point of view, is that the camera itself tries to focus, all it does, it focuses on the screen, on the TV screen, but it was losing the panel. And so the panel was getting a bit dark. And so people can't really see what's going on. Not so much the G1000s, they can see the PFD and the MFD, but the standbys and the other bits and pieces, like they can't really see it. So the camera's, it's struggling to be able to, give you good light over both and give you good exposure over both. And so anyway, so I've been racking my brains with that, and I was like, well, how am I going to fix this? And eventually I think I have now fixed it, although I've created another problem in fixing it. So what I ended up doing, and I will actually be posting a video on this in the next couple of weeks. I think I've recorded it, and I think it's going up in about a fortnight from now. Is I bought some LED panel lights, those little rectangular panel lights, Viltrox type units, I think they were, or something. Again, it's on the video when I post it. And I didn't mount them. I literally placed them on the floor in the corners of the sim, out of camera view, and they literally are just at a slight angle, and they're just sort of shining some light into the central part of the cockpit, between myself and the co-pilot, and it's casting enough light now beautifully so that it doesn't wash the screen out and brings up the panel, which is really cool, because now I'm like, now you're seeing as viewers what I'm seeing. But the problem that it's created is, and I don't know whether or not I've actually ever shown people. I may have actually shown it on the walk around, but behind me, there's some like little folders. It's a metal folder thing, and I put my flight plans in there, and maps and charts and bits and pieces. And I've got one behind me, and there's also one behind the co-pilot. It's metal, and
Oh
so,
no.
yeah, and you can imagine, where I'm going with this. So it's casting. So the light's coming off the LED, bouncing off this, and then hitting the screen. And so when you're looking at the side screens, you're seeing this very slight, this reflection coming down from these units on all these little shelving things on the floor. And I'm like, now I've
Oh.
got this reflectional problem. So I'm just working on a solution for that, which I'm playing with either completely repainting and thinking about, like a matte finish, darker color or something, where I can not let the light bounce off. Either that, or playing around with some sort of curtaining material or something that's down low. I just need to stop that from reflecting up. Now, obviously, that's all off cameras from what you see. You don't see any of that, but it's enough to annoy me. I switched when I edit my videos. I cut to the left view and the right view over the wing, and here I can see this. This reflection just sitting there. And at night, if I was to do an afternoon or an evening flight, when the lights are going down, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Literally you can just see these things a mile away. So I've got to fix that. Yeah.
Just pretend you're like flying with UFOs next to you, and that's what those are. The strange
Well, what was
lights.
it? What was interesting is the original concept that I had, and Oh, that's right. Because my initial concept, I thought all I've got to do is get some light into this. So why don't I just have one, and I'll mount it underneath so the camera that's behind looking forward, I'll mount it under that, and then point it downwards, so it's sort of pointing into the cabin, almost like so the light itself is looking directly at the panel. Now that posed two problems. The first one is, even though this light's adjustable from a lux point of view and a
Hmm.
brightness and everything, it's got all those adjustments. I still couldn't dial it in right without it itself. It would hit the standby instrument, which had the acrylic
Oh,
on the front, and it would hit that, and that would cause a reflection.
oh no.
So you'd get this nasty reflection off that. And but that wasn't the funniest part.
Oh
The
no.
funniest part was I'm sitting in the sim, and then I'm looking up. I'm in a real scenario here, but I parked at an airport somewhere, and I look ahead of me, and it's a clear blue day, and there's this what looks like in the sim a rectangular sun. It was the light from the rear, from behind me. Obviously, it's going straight onto the screen as well, even though it was angled down, and it looks like you're looking at the sun, but the sun is shaped like a rectangle.
That's hilarious.
So I said, well, I've got to get rid of it. It's not going to work here. And obviously, I ended up with these things being on the floor, out of camera view. And again, if I can just fix this little reflection from these shelving units, then I think we're all
Hmm.
good.
Yeah, that's crazy. It might be fun to fly with a rectangular sun if it's like a Star Wars thing or
Problem
something.
is
That would
that
be
it
cool.
the problem is though is that the sun moves with you. So
Ah.
as you're turning, everything's turning statically with you. So it doesn't matter where you go, the sun is just following you.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Oh. Speaking of flying between things, trying to
Yes.
transition it, what are your favorite airports? Um,
Yeah. I've got to admit, when I do the flying side of things, I try to be as serious with that side of it as I can be, and therefore, with a 172, I'm really not going to be going into LAX, right, or any of those major international airports because you just don't see that. You have your GA airports that are nearby and so on, and that's where they go. And so I do typically, on purpose, will stick to those. So um, and probably not. Oh no, I've done a few in the US. I can probably call up a few. Tacoma Narrows is one that I've got the Orbix scenery for. I enjoy going into there, and I've done a few little trips out of that. Um, out of and again, I'll be racking my brain here, but certainly out of Boston, not Boston itself, but just west of Boston, there's a few little regional ones around there that I can't, the names escape me at the moment. But there's a few there that I like to fly in, but probably more close to home. Here in Australia, Jandakot Airport, which is Yankee Papa Juliet Tango, is the one that is probably my home base here. And in fact, I was only there this afternoon. Not really, but I was there in simulator
oh.
world, just practicing some circuits this afternoon. Actually, I was doing it as a bit of a test again for the lighting, but just going some circuits around Jandakot. And then on the east coast of Australia, we have Melbourne International. Obviously, I don't go to Melbourne International, but Essendon Airport is pretty close by. Yankee Mike Echo November. And again, I've got Orbix scenery for that, which is really good. And I fly an X-Plane 11, by the way, and that's probably another thing to note. I know a lot of people use FS 2020. Um, I use X-Plane, and primarily the reason for that is I know that FS 2020's got the eye candy, and it certainly has the eye candy over X-Plane. I don't think that's disputable. It's a really pretty looking piece of software. But X-Plane I just find is much more configurable to the multi-monitor user. The way that X-Plane you can dive into Plane Maker, adjust well, basically strip things off the plane to what you just need. And again, I've done that obviously with mine. Independent camera views, changing those camera views, pitch roll, all that sort of stuff to tweak it. And FS 2020 just doesn't have that. I know that people have played around with stretching their screens, but you get that stretch on the outer edges of your screen down the towards the outer side of it. I just didn't want that look. So X-Plane 11 for me, and soon to be X-Plane 12, and I'm looking forward to what that brings.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, X-Plane I think really has a place for home cockpit builders because FS 2020 is really pretty, but yeah, as you're saying, it's not friendly to people who aren't gamers, I guess.
Yeah, you're spot on. You're absolutely spot on. And I have this conversation a fair bit, just through messages and other bits on even on YouTube. And yeah, obviously people would know and see of Austin and so on. Austin Myers from X-Plane is such a passionate. I'd love to meet him one day. I think he's such an entertaining person to listen to and watch, and I just find him so enthusiastic, and he's just got this energy. But the smarts behind X-Plane, as you say, for cockpit builders is just it's really phenomenal. The Plane Maker program, as I say, jumping into the Plane Maker and making those tweaks to your aircraft, adjusting all the settings under the sun. You can adjust everything, and tweak it to make it look so that when you finally get into your cockpit and you look out those screens, you know, you've got this, well, I certainly have, you've got that blended view. So it literally from your frame, it blends into the wings, and you blend from your glare shield over into the cowling. That blends in beautifully, and gives you that illusion that you're inside the real aircraft. And FS 2020 just can't do that at the
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Which is disappointing because it would be really pretty to have it.
I think it will. I think at some point it'll get there, because if I'm not mistaken, and you might know this better than me, but did the previous version, or was it FSX or whatever the previous one, did it not have the ability where you could pop the monitors out or
You
something and
could.
then move them?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know how well that would mesh, obviously, but there obviously was some functionality there. I mean, I know that they're working on it, because I think it was part of the development roadmap, that they were looking at multi-monitor support. But there's multi-monitor support and multi-monitor support. What will it be? Will it have the same sort of level of functionality in multi-monitor support as what X-Plane's got? I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical about that.
Me
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So you said you've been working on your simulator like 2.5 years?
Yeah, and that people might say, "Geez, well, you've only built a Cessna. What are you doing?" So most people probably built a 737 in that time, but that was only purely because of time. I literally just didn't. If I could dedicate full time to it and all my weekends, then that time could have been significantly compressed. But for me, excuse me. Working full time, and obviously having a young family, you just pick the time where you can get the time. But I do remember, yeah, it was a good 7 or 8 months easy just in design. Design, building up the fusion model, collecting things. It was just, yeah, purely all in that design area. And then, I remember buying a 3D printer. I'd never 3D printed in my life. Never. And so you had to learn all that, and then, learn how a 3D, not only how to I guess send the G code to the 3D printer, but also how does a 3D printer work? And you yourself, if you're 3D printed, there's all these settings, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
heat and print speed and all, bed leveling and all this sort of stuff. It's like, you know, got to learn all of that. So, there was all that to learn as well. So there was a lot of trial and error, in that 2.5, 3 years that I've talked about as well. So many failed attempts at things and things that just didn't quite work. I mean, I think your indicators, your indicator tutorials, which were fantastic, by the way, but they were back in the days where, for me, where I was learning the 3D printer, and I think your video at the time was saying, just 3D print this, this, and this, and this, and I was like, yep, no worries, I'll do that. Thanks very much, Captain, and off I went. And then before I know it, I 3D printed it like 4 times because, I was kept on stuffing it on my 3D printer because I didn't have it set up properly, and again, that's the learning curve on the 3D printing
Mm-hmm.
side. But that's probably, sorry, I'm coming back to your previous question. That's probably another good tip as well is, if you're building your sim and you're going to use, unless you're buying everything, off the shelf, brand new, like you're buying, you know, purpose-built simulated gauges and bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do some of it where you're going to make it yourself, and I'd advocate doing that because I think that's really, really
Mm-hmm.
good to be able to say you've made something yourself, then get yourself a 3D printer. It's such an invaluable tool. And my D3D printer, has paid for itself easily over the years. I remember when I first started, the very first piece that I had 3D printed was, where your yolks poke out of the panel and there's this little
Yeah.
shroud that sort of
Mm-hmm.
sits over the yolk. Well, I didn't have the 3D printer at the time, and so I had that obviously model up in Fusion. I didn't have a 3D printer, and I said okay, and so I sent them off to a local mob here. Can't remember the company name now. As a service, to get them 3D printed, and I think at the time it was for the two of them. I think I paid something like 50 or 60
Mm-hmm.
Australian dollars, right? So, and I thought that's a bloody expensive, and if you think about, you do that times everything else that you'd have to do, it would cost you thousands, I would have thought, so investing in the 3D printer and then learning how to 3D print was invaluable. And even today, I still use the 3D printer today. And I've done some 3D prints for other people for things completely unrelated to
Mm-hmm.
simulators, and so it's a really useful tool. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's such,
Mm.
yeah, it's so useful and so flexible. And like, once you have that skill, you'll use it for everything. Because I have like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think I was telling you before, so my my rectangular sun, but that itself, like, I had to make a bracket, for that to sit under the Logitech camera.
Yeah.
So designed the bracket in Fusion and measured it all up and designed the bracket, and then, and again, I'll be simplistic, but push print in no uncertain terms. There's a few things obviously you do, but basically, as and outspits the model, and there it is, bang, done. And I've
Mm-hmm.
got this beautiful bracket, and and if you can, and that's the beauty of the 3D printer. If you can think it, you can print it pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's nothing off the table when it comes to 3D printing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so helpful. It's like my favorite tool. I'm going to keep it.
mine too. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And they're accessible to like the general public. They'll pay for themselves really quickly, and yeah, they're so useful. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you're sorry, I'm really intrigued with your sim, by the way, because I'm looking at it behind you,
Yeah.
and I've been following what you've been doing over recent times, and you are coming along leaps and bounds there with what you're doing.
Oh.
So um, yeah, looking really cool there, mate.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm
Yeah, I
excited.
saw I think there was a recent video of you with the pedestal. I think you said that was the pedestal.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, magic. Yeah, looks really good.
Thank you. Yeah. I wonder.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything else I haven't talked about. Oh, there's an enunciator, right there, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
squishy for you though.
Yeah. No, it
And
is a little bit squishy. I know. Again, it obviously looks a bit squishy. So your panel, out of interest, did you cut the panel? I think you did. You cut the panel by hand, or would that go to a CNC?
uh, the first version was cut by hand, and I think
Yep.
you can cut it by hand, but I use CNC just so
Yeah.
the laser cut panels would align um, with
Yep.
the
Yeah,
backing.
and I did the same thing for my main panel. Again, I was fortunate. There's a local CNC machine shop near where I live. Well, about 15 minutes from where I live. And during the build of the sim, I used those guys to. They did the main panel twice actually. That's, and there you go. There's the first mistake. So the panel itself was fine. But the very first one that I don't know why I did it this way, but I only did it in three. What's 3 millimeters? That's pretty small, in terms
Yeah,
of thickness.
it's
So
like an
yeah.
eighth of an
Anyway, it
inch.
was 3 millimeters, 3 millimeter MDF, um, which was just too thin. And I got it, and as soon as I got it, I went, "Oh no, this is not going to."
Oh.
So, I used it purely just as effectively like a little template, I guess, if you like. But I knew that at the end of the day, it wasn't going to be the final product. And it was actually good in a way because
Mhm.
I did have to make a few tweaks to it, during the course of as the build was growing, and then eventually I said, no, this needs to be at least 6 millimeter. What is that, quarter inch or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then obviously got that. But they did the main panel, and that's what I love about the CNC. As you know, it's
Mhm.
dimensionally perfect. Everything was just spot on. Even all the drill holes. I did. I mean, I went to town on mine and made sure that everything was there. So it wasn't just the cutouts; it was all the drill holes, all the way the
Mhm.
perimeter. Everywhere that I was putting in that, so everything was done by the CNC, and it just came out really, really. Well, human could not get that level of accuracy. No stretch. So they did that, and they also did the side panels as well, where the window cutouts are. And again, you probably could do that by hand, but again, it was so quick for them to do it. And again, they were just exactly the same,
Mhm.
spot on. So I got them to do the side windows as well, just the cutouts. And then for me, I've got like a capping type that sort of like sits over the top of those and then wraps around the inside of my windows. Yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
CNC precision is like so nice. It's such a
Oh,
luxury.
I think, if I don't have my own workshop, I built mine. I think I've seen some of yours as well. I don't know. You look like you're in a garage or you're in somewhere. Is that a garage that you've been in some of your videos
In most of
there,
my videos, it's
Captain?
a garage. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mine was the same. I built mine in the garage, so had to back both cars out for, it was at least a year and a half.
Oh no.
So, whilst the garage became the workshop, and at one stage there, I was actually looking at buying both a laser cutter, because I felt that a laser cutter could come in handy, particularly if I was going to start, laser cutting, for lettering and so
Mhm.
on, and making my own sort of, switch panel and so on as I was going to make. So that was I didn't end up getting a laser cutter, but I was going to. And then the other one was a CNC. I'd love to. I didn't buy the CNC either, but I would love to have bought a CNC.
Mhm.
But anyway, maybe later.
Maybe later. Yeah, there's always time.
Yeah. There's always time. Yeah,
Mhm. Or usually.
usually
uh,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's not completely true. Oh, this is, I guess, a good related question. I always like to ask people this because they they always either like have a super crazy answer or it's kind of weird. But if you had unlimited resources, what would your flight simulator look like? Like,
Yeah, that's a really good question. Unlimited resources. Yeah, I think I actually, yeah, I know what I would do. I would find a Cessna 172 shell, a real shell, and I would gut it. That would be probably the first thing I'd like to do. I reckon. Yep, I would do that. I would find a shell, and I would completely gut it. And so that's the first thing. Because I don't think you'd find one cheap. So I'd probably do that. Um, you know, I think from the thing with and I think you and I talked about this a while ago actually, but the thing with the Cessna 172, it's a high wing aircraft, so it's because of that when you're doing your camera, well, when you're doing your viewing screen, unlike say like a 737 or one of those big tube airliners where the wings and everything's behind you, and it takes advantage, then you can have a full kind of wrap around, curved screen if you like, because everything's behind you. But with the Cessna, the wings are right above you and they're right there, so they're not sitting behind, they're right on top of you and they're right there. So to have a curved screen, and I'm just thinking how those projectors would project
yeah.
down, it wouldn't look right because of the way they're projecting down, if I'm making sense. So I think you're kind of stuck with, well, unless I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but you're kind of stuck with, what we've got now, which is wraparound views or wraparound screens, and get them as close as you can to your panel. If not, even sometimes some people actually will have the window cut out as the screen. Sometimes will use smaller monitors, which also looks really cool, by the way. Um, but that's what we do, So getting back to your question, empty shell, gut it out, and then that would obviously take away the need for me to go and design and build a timber one or timber box, for want of a better term. Um, and then, yeah, and then, again, I'd mount, 4K TVs. I'd have three independent machines running each one at 4K resolution, or at least. With all the fruit inside the computers. And yeah, I reckon I'd probably spend 30 or 40,000 Australian dollars easily on that, if not a bit more. Yeah. And then, yep, proper seats. I'd get, the proper seats. The thing as well, that's the other probably slight disadvantage of having the wraparound television screens as well. And again, there are some tweaks that I could possibly consider going forward. For my simulator, you come in from the back. You can't come in from the sides because you got screens there. And my screens aren't movable. They're sitting on television stands and those stands are quite heavy and
Yeah.
robust. And so you don't move those and in fact, you don't want to move them because then you start affecting your distortion of your view.
True.
So, so you're coming in from the back of the sim. Um, but if you've ever seen a Cessna, the seats are right next to each other. There is no room in the middle. So it's very, very tight, and so, yeah, trying to, if again, unlimited resources, having something that we maybe could swing the view out and swing it back in, that locks in quite nicely, on a real sturdy frame and get you, that would be nice because it would be nice to come in from the side, because it just gives you that, it's just more comfortable, I guess, to get in from the side and for others as opposed to coming in from the back. But that's probably the only other thing that I would, I'm just trying to think how that would work. But, if you had some real nice, robust frame that you could swing your television out, get into your Sims and and almost like swing it back as a big door or something or whatever.
Hmm.
But like and it locks nicely in position. Yeah,
That would be awesome.
yeah,
That yeah, it's always fun to hear the answers because everyone has very like definitive answers for that
yeah.
question. Um, I think just a few more questions.
Sure.
Often we are our own worst critics. What do you think is the thing that you criticize the most on your simulator, or that you're like, oh, I'm not proud of that one?
Yeah, look, I think, and this is why I love what you've been doing so well, because for mine, it's all about, um, you know, it's all about what you see from the inside out. So from the inside out, looks pretty cool, looks great. And I think, if you have a look at some of my videos there, I've got the walk around because from
Hmm.
the outside in, it looks terrible. It literally is this box, with a black sheet over it, that's covering everything. It looks pretty untidy from the
Mm.
outside. I'd love to be able to sexy that up a bit, and make that look better from the outside. But my premise with that was, well, I'm in the sim. I'm not
Hmm.
looking. I'm not flying a simulator from the outside. If I'm a pilot, I'm inside the aircraft. I'm not outside of it. So I just felt, to me, should I really be focusing on the outside looking in when I'm
Hmm.
spending all of the time inside looking out? And so that was the reason. I haven't paid too much of attention to how it looks from the outside looking in, but that is something that I do criticize myself for.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe I'm focusing on like the overall thing because I don't fly very much. I guess
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably why I haven't hopped in a flight si- in a good few months, I think, at least.
You know what you were doing with the I mean, you've got those when you were making the front cowling section, and you were making
Hmm.
the rib frames and all of that, and you were showing how you were forming up the what was it, fiberglass,
I
or
think
what was you
so.
using on it? I think it was some small fiberglass and so, and I was looking at those videos and I was thinking, oh, how cool is that? Like he's really making that look good, and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at your videos, and I'm thinking, oh, how can I adopt? Can I, is it too late
Yeah.
for me to adopt some of that into mine? And so, you know, but I was far too down the design and construction
Gotcha.
curve. But again, it does for people that come over and say, oh, you've got a simulator, and obviously the first thing they see, obviously they are looking from the outside in,
Hmm.
so to have it looking somewhat aesthetically
Gotcha.
representing an aircraft is good,
Hmm.
mine doesn't do that, unfortunately. But then again, mine, by the way, mine occupies an entire bedroom. I'm fortunate here that I've got a spare bedroom, so um, it occupies the entire bedroom, that plus the operator station that
Hmm.
sits adjacent to it, because it does have a separate little operator station. Uh, but as people walk into that room, you actually are walking in and you're looking at the back of the sim, if that makes sense. So they kind
Hmm.
of do walk in and
Oh,
then they
good.
sort of see it, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. You know what I mean? They're not coming in from the side. So I guess from that's a little bit of saving grace for me. But yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely my project doesn't have its priorities very clear. Yeah, I just installed the microphone and we have had an awooga horn and stuff. So yeah, but
I remember you at Flight Sim Expo, when because I watched that video post, and I recall you actually flashed up a couple of slides of mine, and you said, I think at the presentation, and he has a real fire extinguisher. And that is true. I do. It's it sits behind, it sits behind me there. again, just something just to add a little bit more into the sim. But yeah, I think some of those little small tweaks and bits, they kind of just, you're really just trying to add to the
Mm-hmm.
immersion as best you can, and obviously, you don't have G-forces, you don't have the winds and all that sort of stuff. So, so you try to replicate as best you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, guess what?
Oh, you got one.
I have one. I
Oh, well done.
Yeah, I took a word from your book, and now I have a fire
Yeah.
extinguisher.
Yeah.
It's on
Well done.
empty though, so
Yep,
we're
yep,
gonna
yeah, no,
we'll have
no,
to
well
work on
done.
that.
And I think they look, again, because you'll have this, you'll obviously mount that exactly where it's meant to go
Mhm.
and everything, and I honestly feel it'll look really cool. It's
Mhm.
it's red, it's sort of, it just, yes, it's a prop, but it looks cool, and
Mhm.
and I and full credit for you for grabbing that, and I'll look forward to seeing that when it's in your
Me
sim.
too.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it doesn't see any action.
No.
That's my goal.
No, no, that is true. Yeah, yeah. And
Mhm.
it's amazing as well. Like, with the sim, people ask me, and again, I'm just thinking about. In fact, I'm actually looking at yours at number 32, your dual-linked flight sim yokes,
Mhm.
and I think we've got similar design approaches to what we've done there, to what I've also done on mine. But people ask me, oh, in terms of the role. And the pitch, or more so the pitch, pitching back and forth, what do you use to self-center? And I said, you won't believe it. I'm using elastic bands,
Mhm.
and people don't believe me. I said, yeah, sometimes the simplest things can be the most effective. And you don't necessarily have to have the bells and whistles with everything. My two yokes are basically completely stripped down SciTech yokes. All I've retained is the handles.
Mhm.
Everything else is gone. It's aluminium shafts and push buttons for push to torque, and then all wired through, and potentiometers that are controlling pitch and roll. And then for self-centering, I played around with springs and played around with all sorts of different ways of doing it. And ultimately, I found some, and a little bit of trial and error with tension, but
Mhm.
eventually found some heavier duty elastic bands that I find give me that
Mhm.
right level of feeling, and pretty much does the job. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think often we overlook the simple, so it's fun to find those solutions where you're like, oh, duh. You're like, that's
Yeah,
of course
absolutely.
that's the way. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, you do get the occasional, snapping of an elastic band, because obviously
Yeah.
they do wear out over time. But I mean, they're so cheap to replace, and I just, as a matter of habit, I just replace them kind of every 4 to 6 weeks. What kind of, they're next to nothing in terms of cost. So
Mhm.
just call that as part of your maintenance for your sim. It's
Mhm.
and yeah, it's as good as gold.
Exactly. Yeah, I got like little bungee cords and then like tied them up into like rubber bands, so they're basically like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I was gonna say they're more durable, but I haven't flown on them ever. I've just been like playing around with it when I show my friends and when I
Yeah.
get bored.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the I say the self-centering for the pitch, which is
Mhm.
I've got sorted, but the roll I'm struggling a little bit. I still am struggling a bit more with that. So, you and I maybe should catch up offline about that one,
Yeah,
because
actually.
I find that the mechanical link, anyway, I don't get into the detail, but certainly that self-centering is a little bit more difficult, bit more
Mhm.
problematic for me, than what the pitch one is. So I'm still playing with that. That's a work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to show you the design offline. It's top secret though.
Oh,
No,
top secret.
until I
That's right.
post it.
Yes.
Actually, I think I might have posted it. No, it's still in editing, but
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll have to
Yeah.
catch up.
Yeah, you probably would have. Yeah, and again, because I've got some ideas myself on how I would choose to do it. But again, it's still very much a work in progress. The ones that I had tried just aren't. They don't have enough force to override the mechanical force. And yeah, and so it's what I try and think of something there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, let's see. So you're not a pilot. You're
No.
a mechanical engineer for the mining industry,
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Um, how do you like, or would you ever consider being a pilot? And like, how did you get into aviation?
Great question. I've always loved aviation, and if I had my time again, like they always say, if you had your time again, in hindsight, what would you do if you'd to wind the clock back and do it all again? And it would be aviation. It would be a pilot, and probably military, but not Top Gun necessarily. I actually in the military, I like the Hercules. I like those big
Yeah.
aircraft. That I find them really cool. So it would probably be, aviation, but on the bigger transport
Mm-hmm.
aircraft or something like that. I think that would probably be my dream job. But coming back to present day. And it's funny you should say that because on my channel I've got a couple of local, well, Australian-based pilots. They're on the East Coast, but they tune in quite a bit, and they both fly. One flies a Cessna, one flies a Mooney,
Oh.
and they're really cool because they give me some tips and tricks and bits and
Mm-hmm.
pieces and so on, which is really really cool. Learning from the real guys, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I enjoy it. And one of them sort of said to me once, he said, "Oh, would you consider doing it, for real and getting your private pilot's license?" And I think at some point I probably will, because I could be picking up bad habits, already. So I try to follow procedures as and checklists and so on as best I know, and certainly from what I'm seeing. But again, nothing beats, I guess, real instruction.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably will look to get a private pilot's license at some point. But with all honesty, I just can't see that happening before I retire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once I retire from the workforce, or step down my working hours in the workforce, then I'd probably look to do that. But yeah, until then, I'll just continue to self-learn and
Mm-hmm.
do, and learn and learn and learn. And I really enjoy the learning. And that's actually another point as well with the simulator side of it. So people have said, "Oh, what are you enjoying now that you've actually built the sim and you're now flying, or what you're doing? So what's the real draw card?" And probably the first answer to that is, well, I haven't quite yet finished the sim. There are some still smaller bits and
Mm-hmm.
pieces that I'm still playing with. Case in point, the dual yokes with the roll self-centering. There's a few little bits like that I need to tweak and fix. And so there's a bit of that. But on the flying side of it, yeah, the flying's pretty cool. But a Cessna 172, it chugs along at what, 90, 100 knots, 100,
Exactly.
110 knots if you've got a decent tailwind, so it's not the fastest of aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, the flying, not that the flying's boring, because it's not boring at all. But what I'm really, really interested in now as this next phase is more around, well, what I'm doing a lot more of now is navigation,
Oh
chart
yeah.
reading, understanding, LNAV and RNAV approaches and
Mm-hmm.
all that terminology. That's really cool to me right now, and I'm doing a heap of learning in that space. So watching videos of the real guys, doing their approaches and other bits and pieces, and watching people about how to read charts and all that sort of navigational type areas. I've got Navigraph loaded, onto the iPad Mini, which is sitting on the main yoke.
Mm-hmm.
Reading the charts and all that. that's a real buzz for me right now, and that's what I'm really enjoying getting into. Yeah,
Oh, great. Yeah, there's so
yeah.
much to learn about aviation. And a good
Oh,
pilot is
never ends.
always learning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never ends. And that's one of the cool things that I'm looking forward to in X-Plane 12. Because if I'm not mistaken, I watched one of I think the FS Elite have been doing some little short,
Mhm.
little video pods with the various staff of X-Plane, and Austin was on there in one of the earlier ones, and I think he was saying that in X-Plane how the software loads a meter
Mhm.
at a point in time. And then, depending on what you've set, it won't load another one for at least 15 minutes, and so you've got this stagnant, you know, weather condition
Mhm.
that'll then you're flying along and then all of a sudden the weather will change, excuse me, in an instant because the meter has changed or whatever and it's
Mhm.
downloaded a whole new meter. But apparently in X-Plane 12, it's going to be more dynamic, so what I'm hearing is, your weather at one airport, and as you're flying, this will be dynamically changing, and it could be
Mhm.
completely different at the other end, so where it may not even be VFR conditions anymore, so
Oh wow.
if you're flying in and you've got your setting to real weather conditions, I reckon that is just going to be so cool. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that part of it.
Yeah, that'll be so cool. It's weird because X-Plane is in a phase where everything it adds has to be crazy, or like you can't just like add a new plane, or I guess, but like everything they're adding is like whoa, like that
Yeah.
changes a lot,
Yeah.
and
I
that's
mean, they're never going to, well, I might say never. Now, I should never say never, but, obviously Microsoft's got the ability of, the Asobo group that it's hooked
mm-hmm,
up with, and that graphical engine, and, the digital twinning of the entire Earth,
mm-hmm,
is pretty hard to beat. Um,
mm-hmm,
so, I don't, I'm under no illusions that the X-Plane 12 graphics will still won't match
yeah,
FS 2020. I just don't think it's going to get there. But if they can get the weather better than what they have, if they can get the volumetric clouds, if they get the water, which is what I've seen some beautiful shots of the water, and do a bit more in the auto gen and so on, and if we can still download, and do ortho
mm-hmm,
for XP, then I'd be pretty well sold on that, because
mm-hmm,
that's a big step up. Yeah.
exactly. I'm
And
ex-
in particular as well, sorry to cut you off,
oh
but in
no,
particular as well, if they also, maintain all of that functionality that you have as a cockpit builder with
mm-hmm,
Plane Maker and those views and so on, keeping all that settings for people like us, you know, is it will be brilliant. Yeah.
mm-hmm. And I think it's in beta, but Movie Flight just released native support for X-Plane. Oh, look at that! Just right now, there's I believe the update. I
Oh,
so it's not in beta. Well, it might be. Um, but
that's a
it
Mobi Flight release.
yeah, there's a
Ah,
beta Movie Flight release, I believe, that makes sure you can natively control X-Plane, so you don't have to go through XPU You can just
ah.
confirm. You can code it to the data ref instead now, which just like automatically transfers to the simulator, which is pretty awesome for home cockpit builders. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because there's quite a few steps. People don't see that, do they? They sort of, they see your flight video, but what they don't see is what you go through to set the flight up.
exactly.
So, by the time for me, you switch on the cameras, and then you switch on MobiFlight, and then you switch on, X Organizer, and then I go into the sim, and then I've got to make some adjustments there and set, so you go through all of
Mm-hmm.
that, and then you finally get in and start flying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. I think. Let me see. Yeah, there's so many steps, and I'm like that's one of the things I really want to work on with my simulator to like I don't know if I'll have to like figure out how to write code or something, but to like just make it so that I like click a few buttons and I'm in. Or even, I
Yeah.
think it would be super cool if I had like a bunch of flick switches I flicked,
Yeah.
just for no reason.
I, I have to say, mate, and again, I don't know whether this makes it to the final cut or not, but I, because you're doing engineering yourself, aren't you? Isn't that
Yes.
what you're doing at college? Yeah. Can
Mm.
I ask what field of engineering you're doing?
Mechanical aerospace. So like mechanical with
Mechanical
an
aerospace.
emphasis of aerospace.
Yeah. Well, obviously I've got, a few years older than you, but I look back on, I guess, when I was kind of your age doing engineering at university, purely mechanical. And where I'm going with this is I was nowhere near the level that you are at that age. So, all I can say, mate, is you're going to be a sensational engineer
Thank you.
because your knowledge at your age is just it's off the charts. It really is. And again, I know we're talking flight sims here, mate, but you're going to make a really good engineer. So good luck to you because you've got that brain, you've got that knowledge to do it, and yeah, I sit here even now when I watch some of your videos, and even my little boy, he said, "Oh, who's that?" And I said, "He's he's taught us half the simulator." So. He's a very, very smart man, that person there. So yeah, full credit to you, mate.
Thank you. That means
Yeah,
a lot.
no problem at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you somewhat sort of makes me feel a bit dumb, because
Oh.
I'm like, well, hang on a second, I'm actually am a mechanical engineer,
Oh.
and yet, I feel somewhat dumb looking at his videos because he knows so much more.
Oh no. No, it's just very like yeah, you like show me a robot and I'm like, what? Like what
Yeah.
happens? But yeah, I think it'll be fun to go to college and like become more well-rounded, I think.
Yeah, and I think as you say, like, that mechanical with the aerospace, which is obviously the field that you're looking at, going into, yeah, it'd be great. And yeah, you'll do well. You will do really well. Yeah, so good
Thank
luck
you.
to you. Yeah.
Excellent. That's my default response. I don't know why. Excellent. um, um,
What happened to your actually it was side thing. What happened to your do you still do the whole Captain Bob? You remember you used to have the Captain Bob, Captain Bob.
yeah,
Do you still have that on
I
your videos
don't
now, or is that now
know.
gone?
It's gone. But I
Oh,
should re-record it now that I have this like podcasting
yeah.
microphone.
I think you need to bring it back. I
Yeah.
think you need to bring it back because it was kind of cheesy but kind of cool, and I loved it, and I'm sure a lot of other people did too. It was cool.
hmm
So yeah, no, you should bring it back.
Yeah, it's funny. Everyone's like super divided about it. They're either like love it or they're like, that's the worst intro ever. You need to remove it. It's awful.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah,
maybe I just
yeah.
delete
I
those
think I think
comments.
I think that's the beauty about being an individual. So we all are individuals, and
Mm.
there's no right or wrong when in my opinion, when it's something like that. I think that's really cool. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it entertains people. It's funny. I really enjoyed watching those. I used to think, I actually used to sit there and sort of do a bit of this.
Yeah, I should bring back the jingle.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, bring back the jingle. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
So
more more creative than Liberty Mutuals. Liberty,
it's
Liberty,
true. Yeah.
Liberty. um,
What are your thoughts about streaming? Because you talked about that at the start, and I'm literally about to do my first live stream
oh, awesome.
in a couple of weeks. In fact, I think I want to put the advert up. Well, not the advert. Like when what do? You sort of let people know that there's a live
Yeah.
stream going to be coming up. Yeah. So I think that's going to go up tomorrow. I think I'll do that tomorrow for 2 weeks from now.
Oh, awesome.
But it'll be my first real live stream, and I'm actually going to do a live stream Q&A, if you like, on the
Oh, that'll be
simulator.
awesome.
And just really just to be able to, because I've had a few people coming in saying, "What's the dimension of this? What's the dimension of that? How'd
Mm-hmm.
you do this? How'd you do that?" Uh, and I answer them all, but I actually have said to a couple of people already, look, watch this space because I'm probably going to go to a live stream in a couple of weeks and answer some questions that way. So tune in, mate. By the way,
Will
because I'll
do.
try and make it at a good time for everyone. Um, but yeah, so doing that. But what I've realizing quite quickly is live streaming's live, which means that you can't escape from mistakes.
Exactly.
So, so whereas, all of my stuff's, recorded, so, you can edit the hell out of it and only show the good bits. And, and that's why I like doing the recorded side of things. So I am a little bit nervous. So if you have any tips for me for doing a live stream, I'll be all ears.
Hmm. Tips for live streaming. Um, the better you can make your live stream setup, or like make it as good as you can the first time, because you might get lazy like me and keep it the exact same the entire time. So like,
Yeah.
um, I think just maybe watch like a few OBS tutorials on live streaming in particular.
Yep.
Just watch the best settings. I've had like 3 live streams that have just been like slideshows because, um,
Okay, because the lag and so on, it just
yeah,
chops up. Yep.
yeah. I think for me, it was that I put my canvas at like way too high of resolution. So it was trying to like export 4K. And so it wasn't doing good on my system.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, understood.
but yeah,
Yeah, I think what I might do then is that's good feedback. So what I might do then is do a like a soft start, if you like. So maybe just run a test.
mm-hmm,
So just do a like a test live stream, before the main one, maybe a week or maybe next week or something like that. Just do a test one, so just
mm-hmm,
run it for the sake of running it and just see what happens. A couple of people might tune in,
yeah,
but not have any set agenda, really just testing if everything's working before I go to do the real one. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can also do
Yeah.
those on private or unlisted, so it doesn't broadcast, which is nice.
Can you?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
so.
okay. Well, if you can do that, I didn't know that. So there you go.
But yeah.
Let's save my bacon. So yeah, okay. I'll probably do it that way then.
Awesome. Yeah. But like more like actual tips that aren't gear and software related, I guess, are um I guess have a few like backup plans or like stuff just like fun little like things you want to talk about because sometimes the questions don't come in and it's awkward to just sit in your chair like spinning around. um
I can imagine. Well, I
um
was it was interesting you say that because my setting of the scene, I was going to be sitting in the sim, but then I thought, depending on the type of questions that I get, I could end up going back out of the sim because I may need to break to Fusion
mm,
or do something like that because people may ask about, the Fusion program or the
mhm.
operator station or something like that. And so therefore, I may not necessarily be sitting in the sim because I can't operate Fusion inside the
Yeah.
simulator. It's just not, that's what it's there for. Yeah, so I'll have to think about that.
Gotcha. And then yeah, just like bring some excitement. That's like
Yes,
I
I'll
always
I'll definitely
yeah.
definitely bring the excitement. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if I see you join, because I'll be like, oh, now I need to be on my best behavior because the captain has joined.
I guess so. Let's see. 2 weeks from now is that like the 8th ish
Yeah, something like that. As I say, I'll so
or
tomorrow
the
morning
ninth? Okay.
I'll probably put up a little advertisement or whatever saying, in 2 weeks' time, and it'll just be I'll literally will just title it like Sim Q&A, and just have a bit of a chat with whoever dials in, just to talk about the simulator as such, because I've got quite a few people now that seem to be dropping in. In fact, there's two that have dropped in just now. Like two more inquiries now, and yeah, so it's amazing how it starts to grow. And I never really anticipated growing the channel to
Hmm.
thousands and thousands of people. And in fact, I'm way off that at the moment. I'm sitting at about 160, but um, it's amazing how it just chips away, and it just seems to just click up, click up, click up, and
Hmm.
more and more people start to tune in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. I remember when I was at like 52 and I was like, 53! It's so awesome. Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It certainly is.
Hmm. All right. With the podcast, I have two traditions. One is
Yes.
kind of a lame tradition. It's just, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do have a question for you, and that project behind you right now, that
Yes.
simulator that you've got, what is your well, what's your vision for that, in terms of what you want to do? What's your vision for that there? Where do you see that going, and over what time frame as well? Because
Oh.
I know you're at college, you're obviously very
Mhm.
busy. So what's your vision for that there, mate? Where do you see it ultimately getting? And
Let's see. Yeah, let's see. So I just graduated high school, so I'm gonna move into a dorm in August. And so I'm right now my focus is just like making it as small as possible so it fits in the dorm. So if you look right here, this is actually a workbench I put on top of the simulator. Um,
oh,
so that's one of my proudest designs. And then you can even see right here, there's like a flip down workbench, which I think is so cool. But what do I want it to look like? I want it to. I think my vision with it is to have everything fully functional in this section, and be able to build out the rest of the section so it's a full enclosure. Ideally, I'd have a curved projector screen, but now that we've been talking about it, I have to rethink a few things.
yeah.
um, yeah.
Certainly, that was certainly one of my thoughts as well initially, is on the curved projectors. But yeah, you just really think about that high wing design,
Mm-hmm.
and curved projectors. It doesn't necessarily work the best. I certainly haven't thought about something that works. But then again, you seem to be like much smarter engineer than me, so you might come up with a solution there. But I just felt that the certainly projecting the views down, when you got high wings, was causing a bit of an issue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how I'll fix that because I really want to have real wings so you can like duck under them. Um,
Yeah.
but
That's right. Yeah. And so then I started thinking about, okay, well, maybe you do it the other way. Maybe you actually have the cameras firing up,
hmm.
so you're reversing it. You almost like, but then
Oh,
how's that going to work? You know what I mean? So the
interesting.
cameras are kind of down low and they fire up, as opposed to firing down. So they're doing it that way because you've got
Oh.
a high wing. You don't necessarily see on top of the wing, you see underneath the wing. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So what you're interested in seeing is what's underneath the wing. So if you had your wings projecting out and you had a projector outside the sim
Hmm.
that was down low projecting upwards, that might actually work.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might have solved it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, that was where my thinking was going, initially. But again, I ran out of time and budget. But I think, for a high wing design, that was probably a concept that I would have started go down a rabbit hole with and pursue. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Cool.
So have a put that one into your memory banks and have a think about that type of design.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking like right now, maybe you like even put the projector inside the wing or something, and then like,
Yeah.
hmm, maybe.
There's- Yep. well, that's a good point as well, because again, if you think about the size of the projector, it's probably about the right sort of depth. So there's another idea. Yeah.
Exactly. That's. I'll write all these down and put them in my long list of like random ideas for my
All
simulator that
to-dos.
I probably won't ever get to. But yeah,
Oh, that's right. Yeah. But it
but
does look cool, mate. Um, Looks really good.
yeah, I think it will compensate for X-Plane not looking as cool. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it will. It will. The other thing I'm going to do on mine as well, there's another little tweak. You know how on the underside of the yoke you get the I think it's the audio cord. You know how you get
Yeah.
that curly audio black cord that sort of goes from the yoke into the
Mhm.
panel and it kind of hangs down a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at buying a couple of those from a local audio shop and just, mounting them to the yokes and to the panel as well because again, I just
Mhm.
think it gives a good little effect.
Mhm.
But just those little details I think will look really cool.
Yeah, it's so fun. All the little details. Like I don't know if you feel this way, but I kind of just feel like drunken off of all the little tiny like attention to
Oh,
detail things.
yeah,
It's so fun.
there's so much there. Absolutely. So
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, like right above my annunciator switch, there's this little tiny circle cut out for where a sensor would go to detect how bright the cockpit is, and then the master switch has like a little cutout that no one will ever notice. That I'm like, I want that to be right.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I got to ask you while I've got you there, mate, as well. Like, obviously, with the instruments that you've got, are you backlighting those instruments
I'm
or not?
I will be. The airspeed indicator won't isn't backlit right now,
No.
but Covenator, I think, actually, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but he actually made a bezel that interfaces with LEDs right there. So like inside of the piece, you can just put on, change out the bezel, and then you can interface backlighting. So I'm
Uh,
excited about that.
where was that? Sorry, who did that?
Covenator. He's someone. He's a viewer. Or they.
Covenator. Okay, I'll see if
Yeah.
I can't find him somewhere.
I
Yeah, because I've been looking at for the standby instruments how to backlight. With obviously, with what I've got, the airspeed and altimeter and what's the attitude as well. Yeah, haven't figured that one out.
excellent. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
It's weird. I'm still trying to figure out the attitude indicator too. It's they're
yeah, that's
tricky.
not an easy one.
Hmm.
Yeah, not an easy one at all.
Yeah. Oh. So do you have any more questions? Um.
No, I think I mean I know I'll hang up and go, oh, I've got one more question. So always the way, you hang up
Always.
and you
Yeah.
go to bed. For me, it's I'll go to bed and then I'm like, oh no, I've got another question. But just trying to think off the top of my head. No, I don't really have any other questions. I know that. So you're going to take that sim to your dormitory,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you're going to do all your studies at university, or we call it university, but your college
Yeah.
university. Yep. And then you finish that, and then what's the plan? To bring it back home again and finish it off at home, or is that the idea?
I'm thinking that I want to, uh, probably from there I'll be graduated, so I'll like bring it into like whatever apartment I live in after.
Okay. Take
After,
it there.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah,
Yep. Okay. Gotcha.
it'll be
Understood.
crazy.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it
Yeah.
doesn't interfere too much with my studies.
Well, I think if you think about the size, like if you're going to have the full curved screens and all that sort of stuff, it'll take up a fair bit of room.
Yeah.
I mean, the average bedroom, for me, it's taken up. You've seen the size of mine. By the time you sort of walk around it, and then your operator station next to it, and so on, it comfortably fills a bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it takes up a bit of space.
yeah. With college, I think it would just be like a single projector projected on the wall, or like maybe a TV. Probably nothing
Yeah,
too crazy, but
yeah,
after maybe I can go crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense.
It's funny. I actually modeled my entire apartment with it. It's so funny. So it like all fits perfectly, and it's or my entire dorm. It's
See, That's that,
hilarious.
that's your that's your aerospace engineering coming out, because you've got to get used to, compartmentalizing things into small spaces. It's like getting
Hmm.
on aircraft, when they've got the tiny little this, tiny little that, and so you've basically optimized the space that you have,
Hmm.
and you've you've taken the IKEA approach to a whole new level.
I guess so. Yeah, everything is crammed in there so tightly. There's like the simulator, then there's like some drawers, then there's my desk, then the bed, and then under the bed there's drawers. And I'm really like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to have to innovate a little bit. It'll be fun.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's really cool.
excellent. Yeah. Oh, and then the second tradition is that we need a high five virtually. So I think
Easily
it's
done.
this
Easily
way.
done. Hang on. That way. Hang
Uh,
on.
uh,
No, hang on. I've got to get that way. There it
Ready?
is.
1, 2, 3. Yes, we did it. And then we used that as the thumbnail.
Fantastic.
Awesome,
Fantastic. Nice one.
awesome. Yeah, I forgot on the last podcast. I think we did it with Sky Shad, Paul. But I forgot, and I'm so sad. But yeah,
Oh,
uh,
damn. You can't sort of contact him again and say, can we just do the cut
just the high
thing and
five.
then I can edit that back in?
Nah, nah. But maybe we should just chat and or we could just chat and then do it. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah. How many have you done? Have you done a few of these now?
Oh, that's true. I need to pop up the show notes. So I think this is captainbobsim.com/podcast is where you can find all, if not most, of the show notes. Not always the most organized. So, but we are on episode. Oh dear. Episode 16. This is episode 16, which is cool because it's divisible by 2, and then 2 again, and then 2 again, and it's the square root of 4, which is kind of
It
makes it a
certainly is.
special note, a
So
special
where
number.
will I see the other ones then? Do I look for them on Discord, do I? Or how will
Uh,
I hear the other ones then?
it's on captainbobsim.com/podcast. And then you can find
Captain
it
Bob.
on like my second YouTube channel. There's Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Podbean, Radio Public, Spotify, and YouTube. Not that I
Sure.
just read
What's your
those
second
off.
YouTube channel?
Yeah.
What is your second YouTube channel?
I don't think it's findable, but you should be able to find it on the. Um, it's called Auxiliary Bob Flight Sim Podcasts. So yeah,
Auxiliary
let me.
Bob Flight Sim Podcasts.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I found it. I think I've got
Hey,
it.
look at that.
There
But
we
yeah.
go. Subscribe
Yes.
with the bell icon. Done. Now you've got
Awesome.
11 subscribers on there.
Yes. We did it. But yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
And then
Oh, that's great. I'm going to start listening to those because I love to be able to listen to others as well. So,
mhm.
yeah, that'll be really cool.
Yeah, they're fun to listen to. So
Mm.
yeah. Oh, if you, the viewer, want to listen to them, probably the two most convenient ones are Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so you can check them out there. And if you are on Apple Podcasts, please, if you want to, go ahead and leave a rating or review, and then that helps the show out a ton because it makes the show look hopefully good. But if you want to leave a negative one, that's, I guess, you're always free to, technically, but we'd prefer the nice ones. If you go to captainbobsim.com/16, that'll take you to the show notes, where I will compile at least 3 links. So I'll link to where you can find CessSim. I'll link to some of what we're talking about, and I'll also just link to general things we've talked about. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jason, for coming on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure to chat with you. And thank you all for tuning in. Have a fantabulous rest of your day.
Thanks very much, Captain. It was a pleasure to be on board with you, and really appreciated the chat. Thanks again, and yeah, thanks for inviting me. Much appreciated.